I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today for a webinar that is an introduction to Missouri's tiered supports. Just a couple housekeeping items that I'd like to go over before we get started. Your lines are muted upon entry, but we still ask that you go ahead and mute your line. That way we can ensure that there's no additional or extra feedback that might come through. Today in the studio, we have Ree Evans and Lucas Evans. I will let them introduce themselves a little bit further, and we'll get started.
All right. Thank you, Heike, and thank you, everyone, for joining today. My name is Ree Evans, and I am the statewide Targeted Prevention Coordinator. And with me, I have Lucas Evans.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lucas Evans. I'm the Central Area Behavior Analyst, and I will be assisting Rhiannon with this webinar.
All right, so today we're just going to briefly walk through the Missouri Tiered Supports process, what our focus is within Missouri Tiered Supports, and what our goals are at the statewide level. If you guys could please in the chat box let me know what you think Missouri Tiered Supports is. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just your own background knowledge and thoughts of what Tiered Supports is. All right, so we've got some great comments coming in. Some are saying it is a process to provide education, that it's a multi-layered system, a way to provide supports and increase positive interactions. Our answer for Missouri Tiered Supports is that it's a state multi-tier PBS consultation system. So it's a framework in which we teach and coach staff or providers so that they can better support individuals. Again, in the chat box, if you would let me know who you think your tiered supports team is.
All right, so we had some good answers. So some folks mentioned their ATSC consultant that they work with. Some folks mentioned the regional office. Some folks mentioned other providers that they interact with. And those are all right answers in part. And this is the way we kind of conceptualize it from the state level, is so you have kind of your top or your statewide leads, which include the Chief Behavior Analyst, who's Dr. Teresa Rogers. You have the Targeted Prevention Coordinator, who's Rhiannon. You have the Positive Supports Coordinator, so that's more your Tier 1 and universal strategies and kind of overall framework.
And that's Kathleen Depler.
And Rhiannon was that and is transitioning out, and Kathleen's transitioning in. And then you also have your area behavior analysts, which are going to be more at the area or the regional level, and you have 3 of those in the state, one of which is myself, Lucas Evans, which is the central area. You also have Rita Cooper, who's in the west, and Melantha Witherspoon, who's in the east. And then we have regional office level agency tiered support consultants, or ATSCs, formerly BRT, and there are staff at each regional office that serve this role. I won't go through every single person's name, probably because I couldn't name them all off because there are so many, but I'm sure Rhiannon will cover that later. And really what we're trying to kind of demonstrate here is that there's a lot that goes into the tiered support system, and it's not just ATSC, so that's really the takeaway from this.
All right, our next question is what does the Missouri Tiered Supports team do? What is it that you think we do? If you could pop that in the chat box, please. All right, so we have some people saying that we review and approve, which we do for some things, like we review behavior support plans, ISPs, we review staffing requests, but we don't approve anything.
Right.
Some say that we build supports, excellent, collect data and address need for individuals. We also address need for staff. The takeaway here is that for all 3 tiers, we work on defining what the problem is at the agency level or the individual level, analyzing why it's occurring. We teach and coach others on what they can do about it, and then we look at if what we are doing and what the staff are doing is working, and then we cycle back around. So it's a continuous process.
So again, this if you think about a problem-solving approach, this is really that, and you can zoom in or zoom out to whatever level that you want to talk about, and we're going to show you kind of what that looks like at each different level of zoom through the next slides.
So in the chat box, if you could please let me know what you think Tier 1 is. All right, so we have some responses saying that it's basic, it's needs for everybody, positive supports. So what Tier 1 is it's an ongoing process with a goal of increasing the quality of life for everybody, all staff, all individuals served. It's proactive. It focuses on systems and processes, coaching and training for providers. And this is where the agency tiered supports consultants at the regional level spend their time, and where the positive supports coordinator, Kathleen Depler, will be spending the majority of her time.
So next question. So now let's move to Tier 2. What do you all think Tier 2 is? Take a few moments to answer.
All right, so we've got some answers saying ABA's involvement, a team together approach, additional support for groups. Tier 2 is targeted prevention for groups of individuals or agencies supporting groups of individuals that are having common problems occur. It is short term. It is support that is offered when necessary. So not everybody gets Tier 2. It's not an achievement or an improvement for an agency that's already implementing Tier 1. There has to be the need there. It's for when Tier 1 just isn't enough. Individuals are at risk of bubbling up and needing Tier 3 supports. The goal is of preventing that bubbling up. The focus is on systems and processes, same as Tier 1, coaching and training for providers or staff. This is where I will be spending most of my time.
And the final question for this section is, what do you think Tier 3 is? So we've talked about Tier 2 and Tier 1. Briefly describe what you think Tier 3 is. Okay, so some people indicated crisis help, supports for serious behavior, precise training, people that need the most intense level of service. So those are some good descriptors. So intense level of service, crisis situation, really individualized supports. Those are the things that really kind of encapsulate Tier 3 or individualized supports. And so the key here is to remember that these are short-term, super individualized approaches, really reserved, at least the way we're thinking about it, for high-risk people. And so if you remember Rhiannon talking about prevention being a primary function of Tier 1 and Tier 2, Tier 3 is really, we've failed to prevent a high-risk situation from occurring, and now we need to do something individualized to that high-risk situation to help it. And this is where the area behavior analysts spend most of their energy at. And again, this is a when necessary thing, and it's not just about working one-on-one with the individual. So some of the things that the area behavior analysts work on is processes and systems related to how we help high-risk individuals or agencies that support high-risk individuals. And so again, it's not just one-on-one services. So the key here is that this is still a system approach. We're just focusing on the people that are the highest need and need individualized supports. Oh, I'm supposed to say, also focuses on coaching and training for providers on how to better support high-risk people.
All right, real briefly, let us know what you think the Missouri Tier 1 process is. All right, so we have one comment saying it's general training open to a wider audience, and then find out where we are right now and build data. So the first step is to first kind of have a conversation about what it means to be a part of Missouri Tiered Supports, what commitment is involved from both the ATSC level and the agency level, and then scheduling a separate time to confirm commitment, because that gives everybody time to take that information back to their team and decide if tiered supports is right or not. Then looking at the data, evaluating where to start, meeting regularly, having an action plan, and regular coaching, which we'll go more in depth to here in a minute. So we start out first with those initial conversations. It probably seems really simple. You just call each other up, schedule a time, meet, talk, super easy. However, this is often where the most crucial mistakes are made. People promise too much. Agencies overcommit, ATSCs overcommit on what it is we can bring to the table. Tiered supports is not a magic wand that can fix anything, so we just have to be really careful in these initial conversations that everyone is aware of what is realistic and what the vision will be.
Is it also fair to say that so often a common barrier is people not only overcommit but also are overly optimistic about how much success could be achieved in a short period of time, so they don't have a realistic time frame about making large system changes?
Absolutely. So again, it's not a magic wand. It's not going to fix everything overnight. It does take time and it takes work. It takes sweat, tears. I mean, you're going to have to pour yourself into the process on both levels, both at the statewide level with the ATSCs and at the agency level. It takes a lot of work. But you will see a lot of benefit. So we've worked on building the A-team. Lucas, can you tell us a little bit about what the A-team is?
So the agency team, or A-team, as that lovely picture denotes, is really a group of folks that's supposed to represent all levels of the team for supporting folks. So you have the administrative level, which isn't just first on here because it's alphabetical order, but it's one of the most important pieces of an A-team, of an agency team, is that it has top-level support to not only be aware of what's going on and to kind of cheerlead the effort, but also to make the decisions and kind of push the effort forward. And then if there are, the clinical person needs to be involved. So if there is a clinical person involved, and that could be a doctor, could be it could be a counselor, it could be anybody, but that clinical level person needs to be involved because they have input. Those middle level managers need to be involved because they're the ones that are kind of directing the frontline staff on the ground, and so they need to be involved and cheerleading and making decisions and moving forward. And then the direct support professional or that frontline staff needs to be a part of this group because they're the ones that are actually carrying out the bulk of these supports for the person. And then another super important person or group of people that should be part of the A-team is the individuals and their families. So these are the A-team's mission is to build more successful supports around people that are within our service setting. And so how can we do that unless we actually have those individuals and those individuals' families helping to guide what the supports that are needed and what direction we're moving. And then the ATSC's role is to be that consultant that kind of helps facilitate getting these conversations happening, provides input and coaching on ways in which the process can be improved, and just kind of continues to cheerlead and kind of help them move forward. And again, we can't state it enough that these are things that need to happen regularly. So you can't have an A-team that just meets once a quarter or once a year. This needs to be a regular scheduled part of your process.
And by regular, so one of the tiered supports requirements is that A-teams meet monthly. Another part of the Tier 1 process is the ASSET. The ASSET is an assessment tool that was adapted from the PBIS SET. It's an assessment that consists of interviews, data and policy review, direct interactional observations. We kind of use it as, it's best to think of it as a Polaroid snapshot, real brief of how the environment looks right now, how the agency is doing on a whole any given day. The information we get from the asset is used to action plan and inform the tiered supports process. It kind of gives us a baseline to see where everybody's at and help guide us where we want to be. And we complete the asset at least annually. Sometimes agencies will ask that we come in more frequently. So if they've really built up their systems, they'll say, hey, can you come back and repeat our asset and let us know, are we doing better? So
yeah, so
it can be done as needed too.
Yeah, so another way to look at it too is so the asset kind of gives you that snapshot of and provides indications of where you need to move forward. But if you're repeating the asset, it also can show you how far you've come. So it does both show you kind of the successes you've accomplished with comparing to previous assets, and it also helps you action plan where you need to still improve. So what sort of data would a Tier 1 focus really be concerned with? This could be just general behavioral incidents that agencies experience or that individuals encounter, medication errors, which might be an indicator that there is an opportunity for a better system in place for how things are run at the agency or how things operate. If people are falling frequently, those are concerning. How much junk behavior is occurring. So if the agency is taking their plus-minus observations and they're noticing that there's a lot of junk behavior happening, both by individuals they support and also by the staff that are providing services. Looking at the asset results, again, giving that global kind of snapshot. Another thing is benchmarks of quality, which is another kind of global snapshot. And then looking at kind of what the level of implementation is for the agency. So are we solidly doing Tier 1 level interventions? Did I miss anything?
So another cool thing that we have going with Tier 1 data is TheraP. I don't know how many folks on here use TheraP, but TheraP has put in some ways to track use of tools, ways to track tools coaching and plus-minus observations and things like that. And so you can use your tools data from TheraP as well. All of this data and information should be analyzed and reviewed at that monthly A-Team meeting. So that's really important. We're not just gathering this data to gather it. We're looking at it, we're bringing it to the meeting, we're talking about it, and we're using it in our action plan to inform if what we're doing is working or if we need to do things differently. So the action plan is a nifty guide. It's a map of how to get the outcomes that the agency wants, because with tiered supports, we're your consultant. We're there to help you achieve your goals. And the action plan is a good way to kind of map out how to get to those bigger end goals. It's based on the asset, the data, whatever your mission, vision, and values are, and it should be objective and measurable. You should have little baby step, monthly achievable goals so that you can experience success and celebrate. And it's a living document that changes all of the time. So at your monthly A-Team meetings, you should be going over your action plans, reviewing them, seeing where you met success, and then further planning for the next month.
So, Rhiannon, what would you do if you had an action plan that you've had several months in a row where you weren't able to meet that action step? What would be a good thing to do?
I would look at the data and I would look at the objective and see, is it achievable? Does it need to be broken down into even smaller steps so that the goal can be met?
Awesome. So another thing so at the Tier 1 level, there are quarterly training opportunities. And so this is where you would find like the tiered supports workshops that the ATSCs lead, the tools of choice workshops, which will be put on by the ATSCs, but shouldn't be considered the only tiered supports workshops that they're doing because they're separate. Hands-on training that the ATSCs can provide networking opportunities.
Like with the Tiered Support Summit or at the workshops, agencies can come together and kind of share what it is they're doing that's working?
Yes, thank you. Problem-solving meetings, so during the A-team meetings, when the ATSC is there to be the consultant, they're providing training on problem-solving and walking you through that, and modeling, providing feedback, really taking kind of a behavioral skills training approach where you actually are helping people to know what to do, showing them how to do it, letting them practice it, and then providing feedback in real time. That's really what the ATSC's mission is, to provide to A-teams that they work with.
So Tools of Choice is a piece of tiered supports. It is a positive behavior support, competency-based curriculum that really just helps people build better relationships. It helps keep individuals in the community, helps keep families together, helps staff's day go better because they have a better relationship with the individual that they serve. They're not seeing as much junk behavior. They're not having to respond to as many crisis situations. It is free to tiered agencies and family members, and coming soon it will be moved to Relias, which is an online learning platform. We'll have a hybrid model where agency staff and families can take the didactic PowerPoint curriculum online at their own convenience and then come to us at the regional office level for coaching modules. And we will still have the on-site competency training. So after you go to the coaching modules at the regional office, you'll then, the ATSC will come do a coaching verification twice with you in the home.
And just to throw in one more plug of Tools of Choice, I know I'm definitely biased towards it, but it's such a powerful set of skills to help you interact with other people. I mean, I honestly believe that if you're fluent in Tools of Choice, it makes you a better person. So not only does it make you a better staff person and help you better support folks that you work with in your day-to-day job, but it also helps you with anybody that you encounter in your daily life. And so, again, I know I'm biased, but I really do think it's a powerful set of tools.
Right. It should definitely be used in all aspects of your life, not just with individuals you're supporting. You should use it with your coworkers, with your family, with everybody. So another thing that we offer is interactional observations, so positive, negative observations where ATSCs and agency coaches will watch staff with individuals or staff with other staff, just two people that are interacting, and record the number of positive, healthy, meaningful interactions. So whether they're using tools or being genuine and kind, asking open-ended questions, or whether they're using negative, coercive means of interaction. So put down sarcasm, questioning, lecturing, things like that. So this is the fun part where you get to be an observer. You get to watch people show off their relationship building skills that they learned in Tools of Choice, or if they aren't familiar with Tools of Choice and are using a different PBS curriculum, that's okay too. We can still do plus-minus observations then.
And so here's that BST thing again. So the cool thing about the tiered supports framework is it's really a coaching model. It's a problem-solving coaching model, and we, just to go over the steps again, you show people what they're supposed to do, you let them see what it looks like, you have them practice it, you give them feedback, and you just keep repeating it over and over. And ATSCs are providing coaching on a couple different levels. So at least weekly, they're coming out to the agency to provide coaching to direct care staff, coaching to the supervisors who are doing checks of direct care staff. They're also providing coaching at those at least monthly A-team meetings where they're doing a little bit different kind of coaching. So when they're meeting with direct care staff in the home, or they're coaching supervisors watching direct care staff in the home, they're providing coaching about kind of how to supervise or how to have an interaction. And then in the A-team meetings, they're providing coaching on how to problem solve, how to action plan. And so really the key is that we're focused on problem solving and coaching, showing and giving feedback and having people practice it and experience success with it.
And also within that, one of the big things that we work with agencies on is developing your own coaching system. So not only the ATSCs coming out and providing that coaching to the agency, but also helping the agency be successful at building their own internal coaching system so that you don't always need us to be there.
So let's move on from Tier 1 to Tier 2. Folks on the phone, if you could briefly in the chat box describe what you think a Tier 2 process is, and then we'll kind of launch into what we think it is.
All right, so a lot of people are saying they don't know, continued action plan, asset. That's good because we are, the I don't knows, like we are currently in the process of building what Tier 2 will look like. Right now, we are analyzing, doing data review, building an assessment process, creating action plans, and then providing recommendations and coaching. Again, Tier 2 is not for everybody. Tier 1 has to be implemented with high fidelity, and a need for additional support has to be identified. And the reason being is oftentimes Tier 2 interventions involve giving a little bit of like an extra scoop to the Tier 1 sundae. So if you don't have Tier 1 implemented already, Tier 2 won't be effective.
So things that kind of are indicators of Tier 2 or people that are at risk include getting into fights with other people. If the police show up, that would definitely be an indicator that somebody's at risk. If restraints have to be used, I know it says 485 to 720, but think about having a one-on-one staff person for 12 to 24 hours a day, so that would be an indicator that you are at risk. And I would argue even if that one-on-one person is there for medical reasons, I still think that is an indicator that you are at increased risk because you have medical issues. If you're taking 5 to 10 psych meds, that is surely an indicator that you're at increased risk. One thing that I need to say about this data is these aren't necessarily objective, hard lines for when you're at risk or at high risk. These are somewhat arbitrary. So the state looks at 5 or more psychotropics as being kind of the threshold they're concerned about. And we have people that have over 10. So we just kind of arbitrarily made that split. But I could easily make an argument that somebody who's taking 5 psych meds is a high risk person. So don't look at this data and say, oh gosh, these are the definite at risk, not high risk stuff. So the key thing is that we are looking at indicators, and these numbers specifically might change, but these are just generally what we're looking at right now. And so we're also concerned with looking at all the Tier 1 data because, again, it's all about building on top of what came before. And then whatever we end up finally calling the self-assessment survey and the, I can't even say that.
The ISET,
Okay.
It'll be like a Tier 2 asset. So we have our asset for Tier 1, which we'll look at in the Tier 1 data, but then we'll also be building an assessment tool for Tier 2 where, again, real brief snapshot. We come out, we do some interviews, we look at the context of the environment, what's happening with these groups of individuals that are causing these common problems, and kind of identify some effective targeted interventions that might help decrease those problems. So more coming soon. We are currently brainstorming many I think, good ideas for Tier 2, and we will update you as soon as those are finalized.
So next question, we've covered 1 and 2. What's a Tier 3 process? Very quickly, type in the chat box what you think a Tier 3 process is. Okay, so next slide, please, Heike. So somebody indicated that they refer to me for help. That would be part of the Tier 3 process. It's not the only thing, and by me, I'm going to say that the area behavior analyst who's covering the area might be somebody who would reach out to help. And one of the ways that the area behavior analyst can help and is part of the Tier 3 process is the Regional Behavior Support Review Committee. So that's a place where you can actually get help from more than just the area behavior analyst. You can get help from behavior providers from the community that volunteer on a monthly basis to provide some, oh, sorry, I'm being told to be brief, provide some help. The other thing that we do, and you'll recognize this picture, you've seen it several times throughout this presentation, and this, again, is just a problem-solving approach. So we're analyzing data, we're looking for trends, we're looking for commonalities, and we're making recommendations and providing trainings based on it. We're providing coaching to the regional office level about what to do for high-risk people, and we're providing coaching to agencies that support high-risk individuals to better kind of meet those individualized needs, and then we're providing follow-up support. All right, so let's move to the next one and talk about what data we care about, and this is my favorite because I love data. So again, we're concerned about when you beat people up or when you're getting beat up. That would be, depending on how many times that's happening, that could be a high-risk indicator. The police are showing up, definitely a high-risk indicator. People could have some really bad outcomes from encountering law enforcement. So if that's happening quite a bit, anytime you're going to the hospital for psychiatric reasons, that should be a high-risk indicator. If you're having to be restrained multiple times, again, high-risk indicator. And then again with the staffing, so that 720, it's best to think about that as one-on-one 24/7. And again, I'll make the argument that even if that 24/7 one-on-one staffing is for a medical problem, that's still a high-risk indicator because you have high medical needs. And then 10+ psych meds is an incredible amount of psychotropic medications and is definitely a high-risk indicator. It would be hard to argue against that. And then we're also looking at the data that we collect from the Behavior Support Review Committee, which would include a checklist that we use to kind of do a plan review. And we review individualized support plans, and we also review behavior support plans. And the other thing that we're looking at is, does the Behavior Support Review Committee actually have good outcomes for folks that come through? The answer to that question is yes, it does. About a 66% reduction in the average risk that somebody would experience just going to the committee once.
So a little bit more in depth for the Regional Behavior Support Review Committee. There are 3 committees of LBAs chaired by Lucas Evans, Melantha Witherspoon, and Rita Cooper. It's comprised of volunteers from the community. They are board-certified behavior analysts that are licensed to practice in Missouri or practicum students that are working toward earning licensure. So we meet one time a month per committee. The whole team is encouraged to attend. We review the BSP and ISP that is redacted and sent out to committee members ahead of time. And we kind of have a problem-solving discussion with the team. They call in or come in person, and we kind of talk through what's going on, what the context is for the individual when the problem behaviors occur, and give suggestions and recommendations based on our review. And then, Lucas, do you want to speak more to that?
Yeah, so really the thing that we're trying to accomplish in the committee is to provide helpful suggestions or problem solving. It's not to come in and have a to go through like a laundry list of all the things that may be wrong with a plan or things that are maybe missed. We try to really focus on those like top 3 critical areas that if they were to be addressed or if the team were to work on would provide the biggest benefit. And it's not just, hey, you need behavior services. Though that's frequently a recommendation that we have, we're concerned about the overall person and things that we can suggest that might be helpful for them, which could include, hey, this person takes 12 psychotropics. Maybe you should go see a psychiatrist to get a medication consult. Hey, this person seems kind of sick. Maybe you should take them to the doctor and get that medical thing checked out. Have you looked at their med levels? So are they toxic? Hey, this person doesn't have a good quality of life. Have you thought about getting them engaged? Hey, the staff seem like they struggle with this person. Have you thought about tools of choice? So it's really just globally, what are good recommendations that might be helpful for this situation? Other things that are offered is, we mentioned providing training, and so we're trying to provide at least quarterly training. One of the things that we've really tried to do over the past year is move to a webinar format. Because we cover such large areas as area behavior analysts, we're trying to hit as many people as we possibly can. And so we've started providing webinar-based training. So we did one for the Behavior Support Review Committee. We've done some other ones on problem solving, what to expect from behavior services. We've got some coming up about kind of how behavior services can be effective for folks with mental health concerns, substance use, all that kind of stuff. We also provide in-person training. And what we've really tried to do again over the last year is try to have those bigger webinar trainings that cover like the basics and then have in-person workshops with folks that want to do some hands-on work. So for example, we have an overall training on safety crisis planning. So we have a webinar that covers the basics and gives people kind of a good foundation. And then when people request it, we can come and actually do an in-person workshop that is focused on actually creating a safety crisis plan. So teams can come in with a situation that needs a safety crisis plan and actually come out with a finished product. Other things that we're working on are podcasts. So we have one right now on the 10 common coercives that's really more of a tier 1, but we've all had involvement in it, and we're looking forward to having additional short kind of snippets of things related to high-risk situations or problem behavior that are going to be available as well. So we're trying to have lots of different opportunities with lots of different ways to access it that folks can kind of get information.
And that's really true for all of our tiers. We're working on very similar training opportunities that are good for everybody, that are good for focused groups, and that are good for high-risk individuals. So be on the lookout for many webinars and podcasts. We've got some consulting podcasts that are going to be recorded soon, some more tools podcasts, and then, again, like Lucas said, some behavior snippets.
Or behavior bites. We haven't settled on a name.
So to recap, really the gist of all of this is to let you guys know that the Missouri Tiered Support System is all 3 tiers working together and communicating together so that the most effective supports can be in place for people. So all 3 tiers are focusing on the same positive systems and processes to support providers so that they can help individuals reach their full potential.
Right, and so no single person is tiered support. It's a team, problem-solving, collaborative effort. ATSCs aren't tiered supports, they're on the team for tiered supports. Area behavior analysts aren't tiered supports, they're on the team for tiered supports. Did I? Yeah. Okay.
And tier 2, we don't know who our team is other than me right now, but they will be on the team too. So if you have questions about Missouri tiered supports at all, please contact one of the statewide leads. That would be myself, Rhiannon Evans, as the statewide targeted prevention coordinator, Dr. Terry Rogers as the chief behavior analyst, or Kathleen Depler as the statewide positive supports coordinator, and we would be more than happy to assist you. We have about 10-15 more minutes, so if you guys have any questions for us, since you have us here, go ahead and put that in the chat box and we'll answer that for you.
while folks are still on here and drumming up those questions for these folks, because I want you to get them, I will tell you that the coercive podcasts that were mentioned, as well as monthly podcasts from our division director, Val Hoon, those can be found on our SoundCloud channel. If you'll go to soundcloud.com, we'll be under Missouri Division of Developmental Disabilities. You can also find any of our webinars, previous webinars, upcoming webinars, if you go to the dmh.gov.com, dmh.mo.gov, our main landing page.
Google it.
There you go, yeah. Then go to the Division of Developmental Disabilities, and you'll be able to get to our webinars there. The other piece is we have a YouTube channel both for the department, at the department level, and the division level. So if you're looking for those division-specific pieces, look for that one as well. And I'll be sure to put out an email blast close to the release of the recording of this webinar to make sure that that information is going out in a one-stop shop.
Okay, so one question is applying tiered supports to a regional office level compared to an agency level. So really, when applying to a regional office level, you would take the asset and adjust your interview questions and the data you're collecting for that population of staff. So looking at HR policies and procedures and interactions during meetings and things like that, instead of interactions with staff and a supported individual. But it's all very similar. You're just getting a brief snapshot. Whereas at the agency level, you're focused on staff interactions with individuals.
Yeah, so it's really just shifting the focus. And so you're still trying to help people problem solve and provide a better service to their customer. If you're doing it with an A-team at an agency, the customer is the individual being supported. That's who you're trying to help them support better. If you're a regional office, the customer is the contracted providers that are outside the regional office that you interact with. And so how do you support them to support the people with disabilities better? And so it's really the same thing. You're just shifting your focus a little bit.
Right. And if you think back to where tiered supports comes from, it comes from the school-wide PBIS system and their customers, the students. And so we shifted the asset in our process for providers here with the division. So now when applying at a regional office level, we're just shifting it again to a different audience.
Yeah, and then there's a follow-up question about should we have a supported an individual with developmental disabilities who's supported by the division on our regional office A-team? And I think that's a great idea. Why wouldn't you want that if you had that as an option? They can provide some really valuable input about kind of so when you're supporting agencies to do better at supporting individuals with intellectual developmental disabilities, what does that actually look like on the ground? And they can provide that feedback. We also have a question about what data have you seen service coordination agencies collect? What goals have you seen SCs implement in their action plans? And Rhiannon, have you seen any of these? I can think of some that might be helpful.
I haven't seen any exact action plans for the service coordinators. I know we do have several service coordination entities that are tiered, and they are working on action plans and goals and data collection. I know they're still doing plus minus with staff within their office. They are also looking at the ISP checklist and are they seeing improvements with coaching their staff on how to make sure all of those elements are present in the ISP. Lucas, what have you seen?
Yeah, so so to speak a little bit more on the ISP checklist, so that would be making sure that all those functional components of the plan are present. So to kind of call back to the Behavior Support Review Committee, we have a checklist where we look at ISPs, and it's really focused on, does this document meet the functions that a plan would have to improve the person's life? Not does it have all the required compliance sections, but if you were to take this plan and use it, would it actually make the person's life better? And so that could be something that you could look at as part of your A-team process within your TCM entity. Other things might be, do we have a good way to identify when somebody needs a safety crisis plan? Do we have a good way to identify when people might need additional services? Do we have a problem-solving group that focuses on, hey, what do we do when we are struggling to meet with residential providers because they aren't communicating well with us, or they aren't there when they say they're supposed to be there, or they aren't actually implementing the ISP in the way that we think that it should be? What's our problem-solving approach to do that? So all those things are good things that could be covered. It's really going to depend on when you do that assessment of your TCM entity, what are the areas in which you need the most work on.
And then what are your individual goals for your TCM entity? So like what is your mission, your vision, your values, and then the ATSC will help coach you to meet those goals.
Yep.
Because again, we're there as your consultant. We're not building the plan for you.
Those are some fantastic questions.
We have one more question. Someone is asking, they say there's a transfer checklist for providers to use to see if or is there a transfer checklist to see if the provider can effectively support an individual?
I need a little bit more. I don't know what that means. So let me think out loud about what I think you're saying, like a transition plan. So yeah. if a person who's supported by a contracted entity within the division moves from point A to point B, is there a process that we use to make sure that everything is in place for that person to be successful? Yes, that actually is a process. It's called the transition planning. We have a transition checklist that should be used. You can also tap into the community living coordinators at the regional office to provide some additional consultation around how that transition process should happen. But we absolutely do have a process for a good transition. People don't follow it very often. And if you follow it, things will be more likely to be successful when somebody moves. It's just best practices. It's things like making sure doctor's appointments and doctors are established before you move, making sure the person has all the basic needs items like toiletries and all that kind of stuff, clothing, furniture. If they need behavior services, that's set up ahead of time. Whatever the person needs, making sure that stuff is pre-planned, thought out, and as much in place as potentially possible before the person moves.
So to kind of sum up what Lucas just said, if you're interested in getting your hands on that transition checklist, contact the regional office and ask for the community living coordinator.
Yep. Any other questions? I don't see any.
All right. If you guys have any other questions, again, feel free to email one of the statewide leads. We'll get back with you. I am very thankful that you guys joined us today. Thanks.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.